The Miles Franklin Literary Award is perhaps the most prestigious literary award. It was established in 1954 by the generous benefaction of the famous Australian author Miles Franklin. Despite the fact she lived a life of some, indeed, poverty, really, she worked hard to establish a corpus of funds that she thought she would give to the nation, really, as the Miles Franklin Literary Award. She was hoping that by offering this award, she would be giving writers opportunities that she didn't have. Despite the fact she was living in this kind of fairly modest circumstances, she was deliberately saving her pennies to establish this award. She did believe that a country needed to tell its own story, so there was this kind of fundamental sense of nationalism, belief that Australia couldn't call itself a developed or sophisticated nation unless it could tell its own stories. To be awarded the Miles, in a way, is inserting yourself or the author into a sort of pantheon of Australian literature, and I think that legacy is what drives the award forward.
In the spirit of reconciliation, the Miles Franklin Literary Award acknowledges the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their continuing connection to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to all First Nations peoples, their cultures, and to their elders past, present and emerging.
Good evening and welcome to the Miles Franklin Literary Award Shortlist announcement for 2022. I'm Cassie McCullagh from Mornings on ABC Sydney and The Bookshelf on ABC Radio National. And it's my great honour to announce to you each of tonight's shortlisted authors for the 2022 Miles Franklin Literary Award. Thank you to Perpetual as trustee and Copyright Agency's Cultural Fund for your strong support of the Miles Franklin Literary Award. Thank you also to my employer, the ABC, and I'd like to acknowledge the fantastic partnership between the Miles Franklin Literary Award and the ABC. As always, there is a hashtag, which is #MFLA2022. So post and tweet and gram and TikTok and share your experience and help us celebrate Australia's best literary talent. The award was established after Miles Franklin passed away in 1954 at the age of 74. A sum of money from her estate facilitated the inaugural award in 1957. Now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to announce each of tonight's shortlisted authors and their books, which make up the 2022 Miles Franklin Literary Award shortlist. Michael Muhammad Ahmad for The Other Half of You, published by Hachette Australia. Michael Muhammad Ahmad is the founding director of Sweatshop Literacy Movement and editor of the critically acclaimed anthology After Australia. Muhammad's debut novel, The Tribe, won the 2015 Sydney Morning Herald Best Young Novelists of the Year award, and his second novel, The Lebs, won the 2019 New South Wales Premier's Multicultural Literary Award and was also shortlisted for the 2019 Miles Franklin Literary Award.
The Other Half of You is an interfaith, intercultural love story that I wrote as a letter to my son, Khalil. I remember the day he was born, witnessing him literally coming out of his mother with my face. And in this way, I immediately recognized that the three of us were intricately connected. And by extension, I really understood for the first time that all humanity is one organism. And I wanted to share that story and that experience with the rest of Australia. And later that night, I just felt this incredible compulsion to write. I began to type out those scenes that I witnessed in the birthing room of him coming into this universe. Rust is my blood, stardust is my soul, and you are the blood of my soul. Khalil, the back of the tongue taking a trip to the front of the palate to ululate at one on the teeth. You come tearing through your mother and into this universe like Zamzam water, which sprung from the desert of your ancestors. Khalil, you are thrown into your mother's frail and freckled and fair arms, Ajin against Ajin, Doe against doe. Khalil, I have seen you emerge from her with my face on your face, and in this way, we three are connected for eternity. But do you know, my Ajin, my Zamzam, my blood soul, my rust and stardust, that you may have never been sent forth as a living arrow, at least not through the bow of your mother and me, looking like the little white wog that you are, were it not for the brown girl who wore a cross. You brought me here, now let me take you back. It is an incredible honor to be shortlisted for the Miles Franklin Literary Award for the second time in my career. I feel a great responsibility as the only Arab Australian Muslim to have ever received this honor. I feel a great responsibility to my community to respect them and honor them and do our community proud.
Michelle de Kretzer for Scary Monsters, published by Allen and Unwin. Michelle wrote and published her first novel, The Rose Grower, in 1999. Her second novel, published in 2003, The Hamilton Case, was winner of the Tasmania Pacific Prize, the Encore Award in the UK, and the Commonwealth Writers' Prize. Her third novel, The Lost Dog, was published in 2007. It was one of 13 books on the long list for the 2008 Man Booker Prize for Fiction. From 1989 to 1992, she was a founding editor of the Australian Women's Book Review. Her fourth novel, Questions of Travel, won the 2013 Miles Franklin Award, the Australian Literature Society Gold Medal, and the 2013 Prime Minister's Literary Award for Fiction. Her 2017 novel, The Life to Come, was shortlisted for the 2018 Stella Prize and won both the Miles Franklin Award and the Christina Stead Prize for Fiction. Jennifer Down for Bodies of Light, published by Text Publishing. Jennifer Down's work has appeared in The Age, The Saturday Paper, the Australian Book Review and the Literary Hub. She was named a Sydney Morning Herald Young Novelist of the Year consecutively in 2017 and 2018. Our Magic Hour, her debut novel, was shortlisted for the 2014 Victorian Premier's Literary Award for an unpublished manuscript. Her second book, Pulse Points, was the winner of the 2018 Readings Prize for New Australian Fiction and the 2018 Steel Rudd Award for a short story collection in the Queensland Literary Awards, and it was shortlisted for a 2018 New South Wales Premier's Literary Award.
It's a tremendous honour to be nominated for the Miles Franklin Shortlist in 2022. It's always nice to feel like you're being recognised by the literary firmament, but it also feels really special to be on a long list and a short list with this great breadth and depth of storytelling range. I feel very lucky to be among them. Bodies of Light tells the story of a woman named Maggie from the 1970s through to the present day, who grows up in residential and out-of-home care in outer suburban Melbourne, follows her life through to the present day where she's living in Burlington, Vermont. It's a story of systemic failures in child welfare, but it's also the story of reinvention in the face of multiple traumatic events. Menzies Avenue, Dandenong, 1979. When they came for me, Dad went ballistic. First it was just one welfare officer, a woman, the three of us standing in the lounge room. And when Dad got loud, she put her body between his and mine. And his arms reached for me and he became a machine. Propeller limbs and metallic fury and blazing noise, sending things spinning around him. Lamp, ashtray, long neck, TV, water glass. And Dad told me to get in the bathroom and I shut the door and climbed into the tub and waited. And eventually I knew the welfare was gone because Dad was yelling at the front of the house, and then I heard a car drive off and I thought that was that. I've always been interested but also horrified by the way that the state fails our most vulnerable people, especially young people and children. This book felt like a way to explore that and what it's meant historically as well, throughout the sort of mid to late 20th century. I have a small studio that is very cold and very drafty, but it is a room of one's own and I go there to write as much as I can. I spend a really long time, sometimes years, doing research, and for this book I spent quite a lot of time in archival or kind of forensic material. I used to say I was a slow writer, but I've realised that actually when I sit down to do the writing it comes out pretty quickly and I think effortlessly. But that's probably only because I've spent so long with all of this information kicking around in my head.
Alice Poon for 100 Days, published by Black Ink Books. Alice Poon, OAM, is the best-selling author of the memoirs Unpolished Gem and Her Father's Daughter, and the essay collection Close to Home, as well as the editor of the anthologies Growing Up Asian in Australia and My First Lesson. Her first novel, Lorinda, won the Ethel Turner Prize at the 2016 New South Wales Premier's Literary Awards, and 100 Days is her most recent novel. Alice was awarded an Order of Australia Medal for Services to Literature in 2022.
My novel 100 Days is about a 16-year-old girl named Karuna who happens to fall pregnant, not by accident, but not entirely on purpose either. And it's her way of getting out of her mother's control. 100 Days is a story about the fault lines between parental love, power and control, and what it means to be a mother and what it means to be a daughter. Ever since your grandpa left, your grandma and I share the double bed. She says she can't sleep by herself, that it's too dark, even though the hallway light shines on the stippled cement dots on our ceiling. It's like an asphalt galaxy up there. I hate sleeping with your grandma. In the months after your grandpa left, she used to work herself up into such a state that her chest heaved like engine pistons, going up and down, like the organs inside the rib cages of the cars your grandpa showed me. So I wrote this book as a way to give voice to a character who usually doesn't have much of a voice, a pregnant 16-year-old teenager, but also to explore what it means to be a woman producing art, because Karuna secretly writes in her diary, and also what it means to be a mother and a daughter and how we wield our love and control in equal measures. Australian stories are really important to our cultural fabric because Australia has always had what's been called a sort of cultural cringe. We've always felt we're never good enough. Our literature doesn't compare to British or American literature. And yet, over the course of the past 2 decades, I've seen this cringe become more and more diluted the more diverse voices we've got. And while we have such diverse voices in Australian literature, it expands our perception of what Australian literature can do. It pushes against the boundaries of that universe.
Michael Winkler for Grimish, published by Puncher and Watman. Michael Winkler is a writer of fiction and non-fiction. Nobel laureate J.M. Coetzee described Winkler's novel Grimish as the strangest book you're likely to read this year. Helen Garner said, "Grimish meets a need I didn't even know I had." Winkler won the Calibre Prize for The Great Red Whale, an essay about Uluru, relationships between First Nations and non-Indigenous Australians, mental illness, and Moby Dick. His journalism, short fiction, reviews and essays have been widely published and anthologised.
Being shortlisted for the Miles Franklin, apart from being enormously exciting, I think it's also a validation of what I'm trying to do, which is to expand the idea of what a novel can be, and it's saying that Australia's most prestigious literary award has room for experimental writing and for new ways of approaching the novel. Grimish is about the visit to Australia in 1908-09 of an Italian-American boxer called Joe Grimm. In the entire history of that sport, he is renowned as the individual who could absorb the most physical abuse. So that's the frame for the book, but I use that as a starting point to look at things like mental and physical pain, resilience, the way that men behave with and towards each other, and what it would have been to be in Australia at that time, and what that can tell us about us today. She is wearing a dress the colour of prunus blossom. Her hat is old and the colour of a blood plum. It has a raggedy tail of lace netting. Grim guesses that if he sucked it, it would taste of dust and cotton and head sweat. Her hair is matted like the pelt of a baby rabbit. Below the hairline and above her collar is a neck made of horizontally stacked rolls of flesh. When she drops her chin to her chest in prayer and eyes are supposed to be closed, Grim is intrigued by the horizontal lines that appear as the fat rolls elongate. Sweat is creeping through the fabric of her dress. He pretends to study the front of the hymn book and leans his head far forward until his face is inches from her neck. I wrote this book over a period of years. I sent it to an agent who was excited by it, but he could not find any publisher. Ultimately, it's ended up being the first self-published book on the Miles Franklin long list or short list, which I think says if there's a story that you feel needs to be out there, that a book is doing something that you believe in, perhaps it'll find and connect with the readers it needs to find.
Congratulations to all the shortlisted authors tonight. The Miles Franklin Literary Award is decided by an esteemed panel of judges. Richard Neville, Mitchell Librarian of the State Library of New South Wales and Chair. Author and literary critic, Dr. Bernadette Brennan. Literary scholar, Dr. Midrula Nath Chakraborty. Book critic, Dr. James Lay. And author and editor, Dr. Elfie Shiosaki. This year, we asked the judges to impart some of their thoughts in regard to the 2022 shortlist and the overall importance of the Miles Franklin Literary Award.
There has always been a feeling, I suppose, until fairly recently, that you had to be a man to win, that you had to write about Australian life in a very masculine way. But I think more recently, with authors like Michelle de Kretser, Tara June Winch, Sophie Laguna, we've begun to see the award certainly look much more broadly at what it might mean to be writing about Australia. But looking over its long list of winners, nearly every prominent Australian author that one knows of has at some point picked up a Miles, and it really is, if you want to kind of do a survey of Australian literature, a good place to start would be in 1954 with Patrick White and work your way through to 2022.
I think in this first year of being on the judging panel of the Miles Franklin Award, I have been astonished at the range of literary excellence and the range of styles, experimentation, the ways in which people have expressed their voices in the novels. That has been an utterly delightful journey for me in this very first year. And if this is setting the bar very high, I think.
It's hard to know about the impact of COVID. I know that writers have been really hit hard. I know they're financially very dependent on writers' festivals, on book launches, book sales. I also know of writers who found solace in not needing to engage with the outside world too much and get their books written. We have a lot of first-time authors this year in the Miles Franklin, and they are, to a large extent, of a really high quality, those novels.
The winners of the Miles Franklin Award tend to be sort of canonised. It does have a huge effect on the careers of the writers who win it. And not all prizes can say that. I mean, even though they're all beneficial in their own way, I think the Miles Franklin is special just by virtue of the fact that it is the sort of such a long-standing institution, and that it has over the years, recognised so many important Australian writers.
That brings us to the end of the announcement. Please join me in once again congratulating the successful authors, and help us celebrate the shortlisted authors by jumping onto your social media to tweet and post and tag. Don't forget, #MFLA2022. I trust you've enjoyed the broadcast and see you at the winner announcement in July.
At Perpetual, we're very proud as trustee to have a role in acting as a steward for the vision that Miles had to ensure that Australian life in all of its phases is appropriately represented and celebrated in literature.